Some people thrive on stirring the pot. They walk into the day searching for someone to undermine, testing limits, baiting reactions, hoping to see someone lose their cool. It's not about you. It's about the power they feel when they get under someone's skin. But what throws them off, what they never expect, is a man who doesn't flinch. No raised voice, no emotional outburst, just steady eyes, a composed tone, and a response so deliberate it silences the room. That's strength, not noise, but control. And it leaves a mark far deeper than anger ever could. In this video, we'll explore how to respond with precision when disrespect comes your way. These aren't insults disguised as wit. They're stoic strategies, forged in self-respect and sharpened by life experience. If you're a man who values dignity over drama and wants to master the art of holding the line without raising your voice, this is for you. And if you're drawn to timeless wisdom, lessons in resilience, discipline, and navigating life with quiet confidence, consider subscribing. We dive into real tools for real men every single week. Let's begin. Number 1. You're entitled to your opinion, and I'm entitled to ignore it. There comes a point in a man's life when he no longer feels the need to answer every opinion thrown his way. Not out of arrogance, but out of clarity. When someone speaks with disrespect, dismissing your choices, ridiculing your vision, it's tempting to fire back, to set the record straight. But real strength? It lies in choosing not to be drawn into a performance for someone else's approval. Often, when someone insults you or undermines your decisions, it has less to do with truth and more to do with control. They want to feel important, influential. They want their words to unsettle you, to force you into proving yourself on their terms. But when you respond with stillness, not silence born from defeat, but one grounded in self-mastery, you send a message louder than any retort. I don't need your validation. Years ago, I made a decision that baffled many. I left stability for something uncertain, something meaningful. There was a man I once respected, older than me, who scoffed at my plans. His words were sharp, his tone dismissive. In the past, I might have debated him. Instead, I looked him in the eye, let his opinion pass like wind through an open field, and moved on without comment. In that moment, I understood something. People often criticize not because they see clearly, but because they're looking through the lens of their own fears. They mask their regrets with judgment. They're not attacking you. They're trying to convince themselves that they were right to settle. As we grow older, we realize that not every opinion deserves a seat at our table. Not everyone has earned the right to shape how we see ourselves. Stoic wisdom reminds us that composure isn't weakness. It's evidence of inner discipline. When you no longer react to provocation, when you stay rooted in your values rather than swayed by emotion, you become unshakable. So the next time someone tries to cut you down, question your direction, or diminish your worth, remember, your power is not in arguing. It's in not needing to. The world is full of noise. Choose peace. Choose purpose. Let your life, not your defense of it, be your answer. Number 2, I don't argue with people who thrive on disrespect. Not every voice deserves your answer. There are men who speak not to converse, but to impose. They don't seek truth, they seek control. For them, conflict is a form of dominance, and your reaction is the prize. There was a time in my life when I didn't understand this. When someone questioned my judgment or dismissed my efforts, I felt compelled to defend myself. I'd explain, argue, exhaust myself proving I was right. But with experience and a few hard lessons, I came to see that this need to explain is often a trap. It's not about clarity. It's about baiting you into a fight you can't win, because it was never about resolution in the first place. Years ago, during a high-stakes team project, I worked alongside a man who made condescension look like a skill. He wasn't direct. He was calculated. He dressed cruelty up as just being honest, smirking as he undercut colleagues and turned every discussion into a silent power struggle. One afternoon, as I laid out a carefully built plan, he cut me off before I could finish a sentence. His tone was patronizing, his words dismissive. The old version of me might have taken the bait, defending my position, trying to prove I belonged. But that day, I paused. I saw him clearly, not as an opponent, but as a man performing for control. I met his gaze. Then I responded with only a sentence, measured, firm, and nothing more. I left the space empty where argument used to live. And in that space, the dynamic shifted. He didn't know what to do. No reaction meant no control. And without control, he lost interest. Stoic philosophy teaches that the real battleground is not out there. It's within. You don't need to silence others to be powerful. You need to silence the urge to let them pull you into their noise. A man grounded in self-respect doesn't chase the approval of the disrespectful. He doesn't perform for attention. He walks with a kind of quiet certainty that's impossible to shake. Some people argue because they need to feel superior. But their fight isn't with you. It's with their own doubt. When you recognize that, you stop wasting breath. You stop stepping into their arena. You protect your energy not by shouting louder, but by knowing who is, and who isn't, worth responding to. So the next time someone challenges your path with disdain, don't rush to defend it. Sometimes the most powerful move is the one that makes no sound. Not because you're afraid of the fight, but because you've already outgrown it. Number 3. Thanks for your input. I'll be sure to forget it immediately. Some people speak not to offer value, but to undermine. Their words aren't aimed at clarity. They're crafted to unsettle. These individuals thrive on subtle disrespect, on provoking you just enough to shift the balance of power in their favor. Their intention isn't conversation, it's disruption. But here's the thing. You're no longer the man who takes the bait. At a certain point in life, you begin to understand that not all noise requires a response. You've built too much, learned too much, and grown too steady to let every passing remark shake your foundation. And that's where this quiet line comes in. Not loud, not aggressive, but precise. Thanks for the input. I won't be holding on to it. It's not a comeback. It's a boundary. A clear, calm way of saying, your opinion is noted and already forgotten. This works not because it wounds, but because it doesn't. You're not lashing out. You're not seeking revenge. You're simply making it known that their words carry no weight in your world. You are not available for emotional manipulation. People who rely on disrespect expect engagement. They want your frustration. They want your defense. They want your time. Because once you start defending yourself, they've succeeded. They've made it about them. But when you respond with calm detachment, you rob them of that victory. You don't play their game. You end it. I once had a colleague who made it his mission to criticize for the sake of being clever. He never built anything of his own, but had endless commentary on the work of others. One day in a meeting, after I shared a new idea, he muttered something sarcastic under his breath. Just loud enough to be heard. Just quiet enough to pretend it wasn't meant to offend. I looked at him, steady and unfazed, and said, "Duly noted." It won't stay with me. Then I carried on. He didn't know what to do. There was no tension to feed on, just the quiet discomfort of being seen for what he was, a man looking for attention and not getting it. That's the shift. You're not reacting because you're above the need to. You've got better things to carry, responsibilities, values, goals, not someone else's bitterness. This applies in every context. At work, when someone critiques without contributing. With family, when passive-aggressive comments hide behind fake concern. Online, when a stranger throws shade to feel important. Your answer is simple. I heard you. I'm not keeping it. And then you move forward like their words were nothing more than passing weather. Because that's exactly what they are. The truth is, people who make a habit of tearing others down rarely have much going for them inside. They use sarcasm and ridicule as shields to mask insecurity. But when those words meet a man who's no longer bothered, they collapse under their own emptiness. And that's the deeper power of indifference. It's not avoidance. It's not weakness. It's discipline. The strength to say, your judgment is yours to carry, not mine. And to walk on, head high, peace intact, never once looking back. Number 4, your attitude isn't going to get you very far in life. There's a certain kind of man who mistakes abrasiveness for strength. He walks into the room not to contribute, but to dominate. Every comment drips with sarcasm. Every disagreement is laced with condescension. He believes being dismissive makes him appear sharp, decisive, superior. But life doesn't reward that behavior for long. At first, people might tolerate it. Some may even laugh nervously, unsure how to respond. But over time, the charm wears thin. The colleagues who once gave him the benefit of the doubt begin to avoid him. Leadership starts to see the damage in his presence. And when it matters most, when character counts more than cleverness, he finds himself standing alone. That's why, sometimes the most honest thing you can say to someone like that is, that attitude you're carrying, it won't take you where you think it will. It's not an insult. It's not an attack. It's a quiet warning born from experience. You're not calling them out to make a scene. You're offering them a chance to see what they've become, before the consequences do it for them. I remember a situation that taught me this lesson firsthand. A few years back, I worked alongside a man named Kevin. He was quick with comebacks, sharper with criticism, and completely unaware of the effect he had on the people around him. He'd cut people off mid-sentence. He'd mock mistakes instead of mentoring through them. In his mind, he was just being real. But in reality, he was burning bridges faster than he could build anything worth crossing. One day, in front of a full team, he publicly humiliated a junior employee for a minor oversight. The room went quiet. You could feel the discomfort thick in the air. People looked down, unwilling to confront it. But I'd had enough. Without raising my voice, I looked at him and said, "One day, you're going to realize that the way you carry yourself is the reason doors keep closing. And by then, it may be too late to open them again." He scoffed, of course. That smirk people use when they want to pretend they're unfazed. But I could see it land. His energy shifted. He was quieter for the rest of the meeting. Not because he was embarrassed, but because, for once, someone had told him the truth without trying to hurt him. And that's the point. You don't say it to put someone in their place. You say it to remind them they're choosing the wrong one. Because over time, the world stops rewarding those who only know how to tear things down. The job opportunities disappear. The respect fades. The people who once tolerated their attitude begin building futures without them in the room. This isn't about being nice. It's about being effective. The men who truly go far in life understand that humility and strength aren't opposites. They're allies. They know when to speak and when to listen. They understand that true authority isn't loud. It's consistent, steady, and respected. So when someone tries to weaponize arrogance in your presence, don't meet them with the same fire. Just look them in the eye and calmly let them know. That posture you've adopted, it won't take you where you think you're going. Then let your silence say the rest. Because in the end, some lessons don't need to be shouted. They just need to be heard by someone finally willing to listen. Number 5. If I had $1 for every smart thing you said, I'd be broke. There are people who walk into every room like they own it. Not with wisdom, not with humility, but with the loud armor of sarcasm and performance. You've seen them. They interrupt, mock, throw out clever one-liners meant to make others feel small, all while positioning themselves as the most honest person in the room. But beneath that performance is often something hollow, a desperate attempt to cover a lack of depth. I remember a time, not too long ago, when I found myself in a casual group conversation. Colleagues, acquaintances, nothing serious. One man, let's call him Greg, had a reputation. He was quick with his words, but never with substance. The kind of person who confused cynicism for intelligence, and who treated every gathering like an opportunity to audition for an audience. As I offered a thought during the discussion, something simple, grounded, Greg leaned in with that smirk that always preceded a punchline. "Well, look at you," he said. "You must be the smartest guy in the room, huh?" He expected laughter. He expected me to shrink or scramble to clarify. He was playing a role he'd played many times before, and people usually let him have it. But that day, I didn't respond with irritation or defense. I simply met his eyes and said calmly, "If insight were currency, I doubt you'd ever see a paycheck." And then I said nothing else. The silence that followed wasn't mine to carry. It settled on him. He shifted, reached for a comeback, but the performance was over. Everyone knew it. And I realized something important. People who thrive on being loud often can't stand being seen clearly. Why this approach works, especially for men who've grown past the need to prove anything. Men who have lived long enough, who've made mistakes, learned lessons, built something of value, know that real strength doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause or dominance. It simply stands where it is, firm and unmoved. Responding to arrogance with calm clarity exposes the game without playing it. You're not reacting out of anger. You're revealing that the performance isn't impressive, and that, in itself, is devastating to someone who relies on performance for identity. You're not humiliating them. You're just refusing to participate in the illusion they've built. And that refusal is more powerful than any insult. When to use this kind of response? This isn't a tactic for every situation. It's not for misunderstandings or honest disagreements. It's for those moments when someone repeatedly chooses condescension over curiosity, when their words aren't about ideas, but about ego, when their mockery is a pattern, not a one-off. And most importantly, it's for the moments when you know that silence alone won't shift the room, but clarity, delivered with restraint, will. The deeper truth behind arrogance. Men who constantly seek to dominate conversations with sarcasm or ridicule are often deeply insecure. They've built their confidence on the weakness of others, not on the strength of themselves. They don't speak to connect. They speak to control. And the moment you respond, not with anger, but with unshakable presence, they see, maybe for the first time, that it doesn't work on you. You've outgrown the game. You don't need to be the loudest man in the room to be heard. And you certainly don't need to belittle someone else to stand tall. Final thought. The next time someone tries to tear you down with clever words, don't match their energy. Don't stoop. Don't escalate. Respond with calm precision, if needed, or with dignified silence, if that's all it takes. Because at a certain stage in life, power is no longer about winning every exchange. It's about knowing which ones are even worth your breath. Number 6. There comes a point in a man's life when he stops confusing engagement with importance. He knows that not every comment is worth acknowledging, not every person worth debating. You've lived enough to understand that silence, when used with intent, isn't weakness. It's wisdom. There are those who thrive on disruption. They don't enter a room to contribute. They enter to provoke. Their words aren't tools for dialogue. They're weapons. Passive aggression dressed as sarcasm. Condescension disguised as humor. What they're really seeking isn't truth, but control. But what happens when you refuse to meet them on their level? When you look them in the eye, not with hostility, but with certainty, and calmly say, "This exchange was finished before it even began." That's not a dismissal. It's a declaration. You're not shutting them down with anger. You're simply stating, "Your words hold no place here, and I'm not available for the performance." It's unsettling for people who rely on conflict, because their entire identity depends on pulling you in, on turning emotion into spectacle. And when you don't flinch, when you don't even bother stepping into the arena, the script falls apart. You've exposed the hollow core beneath their bravado. I've seen this dynamic many times, but one instance stands out clearly. It was during a leadership meeting years ago. A colleague, let's call him Darren, had built a reputation not for his insight, but for his edge. He was always ready with a sarcastic remark, always quick to undercut others' ideas just to assert himself. He wasn't interested in solutions, only in winning whatever game he thought he was playing. That morning, I introduced a new direction for a project that had stalled. Before I could finish, Darren leaned back and muttered, loud enough for the table to hear, "Or we could just stick to strategies that actually work." A younger version of me might have replied in kind, thrown energy into the fire, defended my point, argued on principle. But age and experience had taught me the value of conserving my focus and protecting my peace. So I looked up, calm and clear, and said, "This discussion was done before you ever opened your mouth." Then I continued the meeting without addressing him again. There was no fight, no drama, just a quiet shift in power. And the room felt it. He may have smirked to save face, but even he knew he'd lost the moment. Because he hadn't just been ignored, he'd been dismissed with dignity. Why does this kind of response matter? Because not every insult needs an answer. Some people try to drag you into battles where the only thing you can lose is yourself. The moment you engage, you've already given up your position. But when you choose not to play the game at all, you remain centered, untouched, above it. That's the kind of strength men earn through years. Not the strength to overpower, but the strength to walk away from what doesn't serve them. And here's the truth. There's nothing more disarming to a provocateur than your refusal to give them relevance. They expect heat. They expect a reaction. When they're met instead with composure and indifference, it leaves them exposed to something they fear most: irrelevance. Use this approach when the moment calls for clarity over conflict. When someone masks disrespect in false humor. When a colleague interrupts only to assert ego, not insight. When a family member makes a scene to push your buttons. When a stranger throws a jab just to get under your skin. Your calm response, "This was over before it began," isn't just a line, it's a lesson, not for you, but for them, that you are no longer available for petty arguments, for small minds, or for emotional theft disguised as dialogue. You don't respond to provocation with noise. You respond with absence, because you've reached the stage of life where silence, chosen silence, is a form of power no one can touch. And when you carry yourself that way, the world starts to adjust around your presence, without you having to raise your voice at all. Thank you for watching the video. If you found it valuable or have something to share, feel free to leave a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you won't miss any future content. See you in the next video.